Hi, this is a new session, and in this session we will learn about how to configure the identity provider. Till now we have seen how to install identity provider, admin console and access gateway. After installation, the first thing we have to do, we have to configure identity provider and access provider so that we can use the features of NAM. So for this I'm going to access my admin console. Username is admin, password is novel. Oops. Okay, so you can see here it shows that identity server, number of identity server is 1 and number of access gateway is 1. So first we will install identity server. Let's click here. Okay, so here you can see this is the IP address of the identity server, and it says that it is not configured. And as in the first video, we have installed identity server and access gateway on the same box. So this is why this and this is same. Now the first thing we have to do for the identity server configuration, to create a new cluster. You cannot configure one identity server without creating a cluster. So for that we'll go here, new cluster, and I will give name as session identity cluster. Now you can see here the one IDP which is already installed, you can see here. So let's check this, and okay, yes, okay, so you can see here there is a session identity cluster created. Okay, now this is the base URL. Base URL says that you can use this URL to access the IDP server, and as you know that the host name we have configured as msingle11.lab.naval.com and port is 8080/NIDP. You can change the base URL to use the HTTPS service in place of HTTP. So let's do this. HTTPS. But when you are putting the HTTPS, you have to create a SSL certificate for the identity server. For that, you click here. Okay. So this HTTPS, when you click here, you will get a certificate called test connector, and this test connector is by default certificate which admin console is providing for the connection. If you want, you can create a new certificate for identity server and assign it here. These are the some already configured parameters like LDAP access. It says about the how many LDAP connections you can make per second, I guess. Default timeout, it says that if the LDAP server is not giving the response, after how much minute you have to provide a timeout. Okay, so default timeout, I guess this is the timeout you want to provide to all the contract as a default timeout. For the timing, we will just go and configure identity server, and later we will go through all these parameters one by one in the next section probably. Here you can see there are the default values already assigned for the LDAP access. This is for the maximum number of connection that identity server can create with the LDAP server. This term is the limit user session, which limits the session value. and these are the timeout assigns. Okay, the important thing is here is the enabled protocol. So enabled protocol is these protocol are used when identity provider communicate with either with access gateway or with any other service provider or any identity provider. As we know that identity server works as a both identity provider and service provider. So here, based on your requirement, you can check this. By default, Liberty SAML 1.1 and SAML 2.0 is already enabled. But if you want your identity provider to support WS Federation, WS Trust, or OAuth and OpenID Connect, you need to select that. So I will not change any value right now. We will go through all this parameter one by one later. So I'll just configure with all the default value now. Okay. So name, just provide some meaningful name here. I'll give session identity provider. This will be the name of this identity provider. Display name, I'll give the same. URL, you can give any URL of your company. This is just, this will be shown in the metadata. So let's give it like, I'll give the URL same as the URL of the identity provider. Okay, company, focus, first name, it's all the contact address, you can fill it. And you can leave this something also because these are not mandatory parameter. Okay. Now here it is talking about as you have seen in the initial video that when you install a admin console on a box, admin console by default install instance of eDirectory on the system. Now when you are configuring an identity provider, you have option of use the same eDirectory, or you can use another eDirectory which is running on another server. So this is for that purpose. So this eDirectory, right now I'm going to use the same eDirectory which is installed by access admin console, and that eDirectory will work as a user store for this identity provider. Now again, user store is the store where all the user related informations are saved. So let's give a name for this session user store. Admin name, let's see what is the admin name. If you come to the J Explorer, go to novel. In novel you can see admin, so you have to take the CN of this distinguished name for this. Put it here, CN equal to admin, O equal to novel. So here you can see a novel container is created. Inside that there are multiple things, but admin user is also created, so you have to take the DN for that. What it will do with this DN, that it will use this particular DN to access the eDirectory to find some user. Admin password, it's the same password for the administration. Directory type. Now as we are using the store which comes with the admin console installation, and that is eDirectory. Okay, I'll not touch these two parameters now. We'll talk about it later. And there is a LDAP timeout setting. I'll also talk about this later, and we'll go using the default values. Server replica. Now this is the server replica which will give which is the here you need to configure the IP address of the user store. So as we are taking the user store same as the eDirectory provided by admin console, we have to give the same IP address as admin console, and this is this IP address. Okay, sorry. Yeah, name. Let's give some name. Session replica. Okay. Port. I'll change this port to 636 to use the secure LDAP connection. Even if you keep it 389, this is the not secure, but if you want to secure, you have to make it use LDAP secure connection, and it will change it to the 636. Then you have to use this auto import trusted root. So what it will do, it will take the trusted root from this IP address and port this. Okay. This connection limit is same as this 20. Okay, so now we have configured the session replica. Now when you have configured, you can see validation status. If there is some issue with the eDirectory, here you will see a failure. Now if this both are green, it means you are using SSL and it is a valid one. Search context. Now search context, what we'll do here for our session, in the eDirectory we will put everything inside this novel, everything inside the novel. So our search criteria will be only one label, and that will be O equal to novel. See, you can see I have taken the DN from here, and we are going to store all the users here. Like admin is stored just below the novel, so we are going to store all the user here, but it all depends on the requirement how you are going to store your users. Okay, now I'll do finish, and it says that a restart of the Tomcat is required to apply the change, at which point all identity server session will be reset. Select OK to restart the Tomcat now, or select cancel or restart later. Do OK. Here you can see previously it was not configured, but now it shows that update all. Whenever you do any change in the identity provider, you can see there is an update in front of this IP address, and there is an update all, because in a cluster you can put more than one identity providers. So update all, if you use update all, it will do update to all at the same time. But if you want to individual identity server update, you have to use this update. So okay, after doing the OK, you have to use the refresh button, and the refresh button will keep checking that about the status. Okay, so you can see here the color is changing now. Wow. So the status is current right now. Let's see our configuration, whatever. Now if you do edit, you can see there are multiple things here. It talks about you can see all this configuration, and we will take a separate class for this, for all this configuration parameter. But just in a short, this local, it contains information about the user store, where all the users are stored. Classes, this has all the authentication classes. Method, it contains all the authentication methods. Contract, it contains all the authentication contracts used by IDP. Defaults, this contains the default user store used by the identity server, or default authentication contract used by identity server. If there is if not such a option is provided to identity server, it will use one of this as a default. If you go to Liberty is another protocol which is used for the federation, but when you are when you want to access gateway to use identity server, in that case this Liberty, the communication between AG and identity provider will be Liberty. We have another federation protocol, that is SAML 1.1, SAML 2.0, WS Federation. Brokering is another very nice thing. WS Trust, OAuth, and OpenID. So this is okay. Now in this, you can see if this button is green, it means everything is okay with the IDP, and status is current, it means whatever is in the admin console, that is there in the IDP. But if this status is different and this is not green, it means there is some problem and we have to rectify those problems. Okay, there you can see the commands. These are the command which is triggered by the access gateway or identity provider, and it gives the whether it's a successful or not. We will talk about this later. Okay, now you can see there are different actions here. You can remove it from the cluster, you can delete it, update health from server, you can export the configuration of this identity provider, import a configuration from somewhere. So we will talk about this all later. But for the configuration point of view, this is the mainly configuration you have to do with the IDP to start with. But based on your requirement, your configuration will change. Probably you need to create many of these you need to configure. Okay, so this was all about the identity server configuration. In the next session, I will talk about how to configure access gateway and how to link this access gateway to use identity server as identity provider. Thanks. Let's go back to the E directory. So here you can see access manager container NIDS cluster. Previously there was a single entry, this big string, but now you can see after identity provider configuration, this came, and this contains all the configuration related to identity provider. You can see, I'll just give a quick tour, but you need to go through this element and just try to see that what all different values are there. So if you see, this gives you the NIDP base URL what we have configured, the name and the different things configured here. if you click here, it all talks about the, you can see there are multiple contracts and multiple methods were there, so these all are related to that. This is for Liberty, this is for Liberty if you create a service provider. If this is for WS Federation, this is for OAuth container, and this is for NIDS organization. I don't know what's that, I need to check it. And this is for if you create a SAML2 identity provider, SAML2 service provider. Yeah, SAML2 identity provider, and this is SAML1 identity provider. This is for SAML1 service provider and SAML2 service provider. So basically this, under the cluster, this second one contains all the information about the identity server configuration. And whenever you do any change, you will see that there is something which is changing here.